So in today's class, we are going to discuss about the concept of constructor. Okay. So what is the necessity of constructor? We have to see first. Okay. And then we will see one example. So that illustrates the use of the constructor. Okay. So to illustrate the necessity of the constructor, so now let us see one example. Okay. So let us take one simple example program. So write one program, notepad, box demo.java. So suppose I have one class like this box. So here we have some variables like double height and width and depth. Okay. And one method is set dim. This method is used to set the dimensions like height, width, and depth. Then write this height equal to h and then width equal to w, then depth equal to d. Okay. So then calculate volume. So calculate volume system. So this is going to return so height star, width star, and depth. So this is one class. Then inside this main class, write public static void main, and then string args. Okay. So here let us create object for this box class. Box B is equal to new B. Then system dot out dot println volume is B dot volume. So before computing this volume, what you have to do is you need to set the dimensions by invoking set dim method. Set dim method. For example, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So then close this and close this. Okay. This is the simple example which illustrates the use of this method set dim. What is the purpose of this set dim method? So the purpose of this method is to initialize the instance variables, that is height and then width and then depth. Okay. So then calculate the volume of a box. Return height star h h h d. Height star, width star, and depth. Okay. So then in order to invoke this, what you have to do is you need to call the method b dot set dim. Okay. So now when you run this code, so compile this Java C and box demo dot Java. So this is double DOUBLE. This is double. Now compile this code and run box demo, Java box demo. So it is going to return the volume as 60. That is 3 star 4, that is 12, 12 into 5, that is 60. It is going to return 60. Okay. So now here the use of this set DIM method is redundant. Okay. Because in order to invoke this, what you have to do is you should call this particular method using object of the class. Okay. So now calling the method means it takes some overhead. Okay. It is a burden to the system. Okay. So that in order to moreover, its sole purpose is to initialize these instance variables, that is height, width, and depth. So that if you want to avoid this, okay, and this particular writing this extra method set dm and calling this method again from this main program. So if you want to eliminate this, so now Java provides a mechanism. So that is known as the constructor. Now in place of this method, what we can do is we can use a constructor. So it is somewhat similar to this method. Okay. So now let us see what is a constructor and how to replace this with a constructor. Okay. So now what is meant by this constructor? We see the definition. And what is the advantage of using this constructor than a method? Okay. So basically, so a constructor is a special method. So basically, a constructor is a special method and whose name is same as class name. Okay. So basically, a constructor is a special method whose name is same as a class name. Okay. So that is it is just like a method. Okay, but the name of this method is the class name itself. You have to use the class name as the name of the constructor. So that is one point. So constructor is a special method whose name is same as the class name. Now a constructor, what is its sole purpose? Is it is used to initialize instance variables. Okay. So the purpose of the constructor is used to initialize the instance variables. So what are instance variables? So instance variables are the variables inside the class. Okay, variables declared inside a class. So is known as instance variables. Okay. So now if you want to provide the values to the instance variables, like in this particular class, so your height is an instance variable, your width is an instance variable, and depth is an instance variable. So here three instance variables are there. Now in order to provide the values to these instance variables, so now you can go for the constructor. Now that means you can replace this method, okay, setDim method with a constructor. Okay, so that is the purpose of this constructor. Okay, so now when this constructor is going to execute, so now one of the advantage of this constructor is, so now it is executed, constructor is going to execute when an object of that class is created and before new operator completes. Okay. So whenever you are creating an object of that particular class, so automatically its constructor is going to be executed. For example, this one is there. So box B1. Now, whenever you write this statement instantiated, whenever an object is instantiated, so automatically the constructor is going to execute. Now, before the completion of this new part, now the constructor is going to execute. Okay, that is. Now the constructor is executed whenever an object of that class is created. An object of that class is created. So, and one more important point is constructor never returns any value. Okay, even void. Constructor never returns any value. That is, you do not include the return type to a constructor. For example, you will see this method definition. So this is void set dimensions. This is a method definition. Now in the header of this method, what you should do is you have to include this return type. Suppose if there is no return type, include this void type. Okay, for example, if it is a method, include the just void type if it never returns any value. If it returns a value, then include the corresponding data type here. Okay. So, but when coming to the constructor, so it never returns any value, even void. So why it never returns any value? That is the implicit return type is the class type itself. Okay. So its implicit return type is the class type itself. That is the class in which it resides. Okay. Now the constructor returns the same class type. Suppose if the class type is here box, now its return type is box is itself. So that there is no need to mention the return type. Okay. So this is called the constructor. Okay. So now the general form. So the general form of this particular constructor is so that is the syntax for writing the constructor is so constructor name is same as the class name. So sometimes it takes parameters. Okay. Here you can write initialization statements you can write and then close. Okay. Initialization statements and then close. So this one. So here you can write general form. For example, there is a class box. So here you can write the constructor whose name is same as the class name. Okay, his name is same as class name. So what is the class name here? Suppose box. Okay. Suppose here some variable is equal to instance variable depth is there. So depth equal to D. So you have to close like this. So for example, here we have one instance variable depth. Okay. So now the instance variable depth is initialized using the constructor. Okay. Using the constructor box. So box, this is the name of the constructor. So this is the name. What is the name of the constructor? This one. So the constructor name. So this is the name of the constructor. Okay. And these are the parameters. These are the parameters. And this is the initialization part. So mostly the constructor uses only initialization statements only. Okay. So this is the next part. This is the example. This is the general form. Okay. So now let us see one example that illustrates the use of this constructor. Okay. So let us take this same example. Now we can replace this particular method with a constructor. Okay. For example, this method is replaced with the constructor box double H, and this is there is no change here. So double height, double width, double depth, and height equal to H and width equal to W and depth equal to D. So there is no change here. Okay. So only replace the name of the method with the constructor name. That's it. Okay. So now this part is not required because the constructor for constructor there is no need to call explicitly. Okay. So that you can remove this part. Okay. So but whenever you are writing a constructor here, creating an object, box B is equal to new box. Now it's somewhat similar to a function call, this one. Okay. Now this indirectly invokes the constructor box, which takes how many arguments? Three different arguments are there. How many arguments are there? Three different arguments are there. One is double H height, double width, double depth. Okay, you have to pass height, width, and depth. Okay. So now you need to pass height is 5, width is 6, depth is 7. Now, whenever an object is created, automatically these values are passed as parameters to this constructor. Okay. So this one height is initialized, H is initialized with 5, and W with 6, and D with 7. Now height is 5, width is 6, depth is 7. So that the instance variables height, width, depth are initialized with 5, 6, 7. So now you will get the result like this. Now when you compile this code, Java C, box, Java. Now this returns to 10 as the volume. Okay. 10 as the volume. Suppose I want to include the return type void here. Okay. Return type void here. Okay. Now let us check what happened. Now when you compile the code, now generally it returns a compile time error. That is error, but it is constructor box in box cannot be applied to a given type. Okay. So that is box B equal to new box. So required no arguments, but it counts int. Okay. So when you write like this, what happened is this will be treated as a method. This will be treated as a method, so that it needs an explicit call. Okay. It needs an explicit call. That's why it is telling the reason the actual and formal arguments list differ in length. Okay. It will not be treated as a constructor. Okay. So that's why I don't include this return type. For example, I want to use again box. Box, its return type is now box. Okay. So again, see what happened. Now it is going to return more compile time errors. What it is, now constructor box in class box cannot be applied to a given type. Okay. So this will be treated as another ordinary method. Okay. This will be treated as ordinary method, so that don't include any return type. So its implicit type is box type itself, so that there is no need of any return type here. So now Java, now this returns the volume. Okay. So this is a simple example which illustrates the use of constructor. Illustrates the use of the constructor. Now let us see what are different types of constructors. Okay. Now the next thing is what are different types of constructors. So next types of constructors. Types of constructors. So now the first type is default constructor, and the second one is parameterized constructor. And sometimes you can also write copy constructor. You can also use copy constructor. So these are the three different types of constructors. So one is the default constructor, parameterized constructor, and the copy constructor. Three types of constructors are there. So what is this default constructor? So default constructor means a constructor with no arguments. Constructor with no arguments. So that is known as the default constructor. Okay. Constructor with no arguments. So for example, if you have one class constructor like this box, so then there are no arguments here. This constructor will not take any arguments. This type of constructor is known as the default constructor. Okay, this is called default constructor. So for example, in the earlier case, so if you want to make this as a default constructor, okay. So then what you have to do is you can write a box. Here you can directly give values 5, 6, 7, 8 like that. Okay. So now this will not take any arguments. This is the example for default constructor. So this one is the default one here. Here the box constructor is known as, this is the constructor called default constructor. That means no arguments. There are no arguments. This will not take any arguments, hence it is called a default constructor. For example, when you compile this code, so now this calculates. So 5, 6, 8, 5 star, 6 star, 8, that is equal to 240. Okay. So this is known as the default constructor. And next, coming to the second one, parameterized constructor. Now it takes parameters. That is a constructor with parameters is known as the parameterized constructors. For example, this is double D. Now here you can write something. Okay. This is known as the parameterized constructor. Okay. If a constructor takes some parameters, then it is known as the parameterized constructor. Okay. So for example, in the earlier case, so it takes some parameters like this. So now this is the parameterized one. So this takes three parameters here. Okay. This takes three parameters. So this one 5, 6, 7. Now the box double height, width, depth. So height equal to h, width equal to w, and depth equal to t. Now this takes three arguments, hence it is known as the parameterized constructor. Okay. This is called the parameterized constructor. So next, third one. Now the third type of constructor is known as the copy constructor. Now a constructor takes values from another constructor. Okay. A constructor takes values from another constructor. So and is used to initialize instance variable. It is used to initialize the instance variable. That is called copy constructor. Okay, it takes value from one constructor and it initializes instance variables from there. Okay. So for example, if you take this There is a constructor car. There is a constructor car. So string B. Okay. Now, if there is an instance variable called brand, okay, there is an instance variable called brand. So, for example, string brand is there. Okay, this is one instance variable. Now, this instance variable is initialized with B, that is brand is equal to B. Now, let us write another constructor car. Now, this car takes B. Okay, this car takes B as argument. Then initialize this brand is equal to this B dot brand. Brand is equal to B dot brand. Okay, what is this B? Now this takes the previous constructor. Okay, what you have passed earlier. Okay, now this reads B from this previous constructor, and this value of this B dot brand, that is previous constructor value, will be initialized with this new class instance variable. Now the new class, new constructor, this is another constructor, second constructor. Now this constructor takes object of the previous one, object of the previous constructor as argument, so that it points p dot brand, that is this brand, is initialized with this brand. Okay. So this is called the copy constructor. This is known as the copy constructor. Okay, for example, let us take this. Let us take one example, this one. So cc.java. So let us take one copy constructor. Now class car is there. Class car, here let us take one string brand. Write one constructor car, string B, then write brand equal to, B, and write another constructor car. Now this takes object of this class car. Okay, then write brand is equal to this B dot brand. Brand is equal to B dot brand. Write copy constructor class CC. Then write public static void main and a string args. String args. And then write create object for first class. The first one, car C1 is equal to new car. Car C1 is equal to new car of pass one string. What is the string? Suppose Hyundai. Okay. Then car C2 is equal to new car of. Now this constructor is taking C1 as argument. Suppose if you want to print system.out.println C2.brand. Okay. C2.brand. What is the C1? Now C1 constructor takes a Hyundai. Now this string is passed as argument to this B. Now B equal to Hyundai, then B equal to brand. That is brand is equal to Hyundai. Okay. Then what is this brand in our C2 object? Our C2 object brand is equal to B dot brand. What is this B? B is the car object. This one C1. Now C1 points Hyundai, so that this brand C2 brand is also Hyundai. You will get output result for this is Hyundai. Now when you compile this Java C CC dot Java and then Java CC, so you'll get the result is equal to Hyundai. Result is equal to Hyundai. Okay. So this is called copy constructor. Copy constructor. So now what happened here is, now when you create an object like this for C1, now what is this C1 is equal to Hyundai. Okay. C1 is equal to Hyundai. When you are initializing C2 is equal to C1, now C1 points an instance variable brand, Hyundai. Now when you write C2 is equal to C1, then it also points same. This is called copy constructor, copying the values of this C1. Now this C2 is copying the value of this Hyundai from C1. Okay. That is B dot brand. What is this B dot brand Hyundai? Is copied into brand variable of this C2. This value will be copied into brand variable of this is C2. This is known as the copy constructor. Okay. So these are the three different types of constructors. One is the default constructor, second one is the parameterized constructor, and third one is the copy constructor. So there are three types of constructors are there. Now, sometimes a class consists of more than one constructor. Okay. So in a class, you can write multiple constructors, more than one constructor. So that is known as the constructor overloading. Okay. Constructor overloading. So what is this constructor overloading means? So if a class contains more than one constructor, if a class contains more than one constructor, then it is called constructor overloading. Constructor overloading. So like your methods, okay, method overloading is there. What is method overloading? Method overloading means using the same method name, okay, for different purposes. Using the same method name for different purposes is known as method overloading. Similarly, you can use the same constructor in more than one time. Okay, that is the class includes multiple constructors with the same name. For example, this box class is there. Okay, so it has a default constructor and with one, suppose with one argument, and sometimes with two arguments, whatever it may be. Okay, this is one constructor and this is another constructor and this is another constructor. Okay, that is a default constructor and a single parameter constructor and a constructor with three parameters. Okay, now such a mechanism is known as the constructor overloading, using the same constructor name in a program multiple times. Okay, more than one time. So such a mechanism is known as constructor overloading. So now we will see one example program how to use this constructor overloading. Okay. So let us take one example to illustrate the use of constructor overloading. Okay. So take one notepad file, constructor overloading Java. So let us take a class, same example. This box example you can take. So double height and width and depth. Okay. And first write one default constructor box. Now this is going to initialize the instance variables. Height equal to and width equal to something, and then depth equal to 5. So like that you can initialize. This is the default one. And let us take one constructor with single argument. So double length is equal to now height equal to width equal to depth equal to 5, suppose. And write another constructor with 3 parameters. So double height, double width, and double depth. Okay. So double H and double W and double T. So height equal to H and width equal to W, depth equal to D. Okay. Depth equal to D. So like that you can initialize. So now here there are three constructors are there. One is the default and another one is the parameter, single parameter constructor and 3 parameter constructor. Okay. So then write one main class constructor overloading single and public, and this is the main method. Public static void main string jars. Now let us create object for each and every invoke. In order to invoke each and every constructor, create an object appropriately. Now to invoke the first constructor, because it is the default constructor. So box B1. Next constructor box B2, it takes a single parameter. And third constructor box B3 is equal to new box. It takes 3 parameters, 6, 7, 8, suppose. Okay. Now invoke. Now I want to calculate the volume of this particular box. Then what you have to do is write double volume. Now this is going to return height star, width star, depth. Okay. This is going to return height star, width star, depth. Now invoke the method system.out.ln. So volume of box is now B1 dot volume. Now this is the method volume invoked on object B1. Okay, similarly, invoke the object volume method on object B2 and object B3. Okay. Invoke the method volume on object B1. So what is this B1? Now whenever an object of this B1 is created, what happened is, so the default constructor is going to invoke. So what is the default constructor? This one. Now this is going to initialize the instance variables height 3 and width 4 and depth 5. Okay. So now this is 3 star, 4 star, 5. You will get 12 into 5, that is 60. You will get for this. Next box B2. Now this B2 invokes a single parameter constructor. This one, double length. Okay, height equal to width equal to depth equal to 5. Okay. So height width equal to depth equal to not 5. This one use this parameter length. Okay, what is this length here? 4. 4 star, 4 star, 4 you will get. Okay. Next, third one B3. Now B3 takes 3 parameter constructor. So it is going to invoke this one, double H, double W, double D. 6, 7, and 8. Height equal to 6, width equal to 7, depth equal to 8. Okay. Now when you invoke this B3 dot value, it returns 6 star, 7 star, 8. Okay. Now let us compile this Java COL dot Java. Oh. So this is the width WIDTH. Okay. So when you compile this code, Java C, okay. So compile successfully and then COL dot Java. Java COL. Run this. Now volume of box first one B1 dot volume returns 3 star 4 12 12 into 5 60. Okay. Next. This is 4. Second B dot volume of box is 64 for B2. Now B2 is 4, it takes 4 4 star 4 star 4, that is 16 into 4 64. And next third one is 6 7 8. 6 into 7, that is 42. 42 into 8, that is 336 you will get. Okay. Right star with the star, that is B3. B3 dot star. B3 dot volume. Okay. Understand all of you? So this is called the constructor overloading. Okay, please make a note of this program. Okay, so this is regarding this constructor overloading, right? So overloading of constructor means the class contains more than one constructor. If a class contains more than one constructor, so that is known as the overloading of constructors. Okay, so this is regarding constructor. So in today's class, so we have discussed about the concept of the constructor, what is constructor and what are different types of constructors. Okay, so constructor is basically, constructor is a special member function basically. So whose name is same as the class name. Okay, whose name is same as the class name. So and it never returns any value. It never returns any value, even white type also. Okay. So that is called constructor. And when it is going to execute, a constructor is going to execute whenever an object of that class is created. For example, in the earlier case, box B is equal to new box. Okay. So, and it has one constructor, suppose there is a constructor box. Okay. So, like this. Now, this constructor is going to be executes whenever an object is created, whenever an object of that class is created. Suppose if you want to see the illustration of this, so you can write one print statement here. System.out.println. This is the default constructor. Default constructor executed. Like that, you can write some acknowledgement here. Okay. Default constructor executed this one. So like that, this is single parameter constructor. This is a single parameter constructor. Single parameter constructor executed. So here three parameters. Three parameters constructor executed. So you can write acknowledgement like this. So now when you compile this code and run, now you will have a statement like this. Now default constructor, single parameter constructor, and three parameter constructor executed. That is, whenever objects are created in a sequence like this, V1, box V1 equal to new box, and box B2 is equal to new box B3 is equal to new box, like that. So when you create objects in a sequence, its constructors also executed in a sequence like this. Default constructor executed, single parameter constructor executed, three parameter constructors executed. CON. Okay. Default constructor, single parameter constructor, and two parameter constructor. Okay. So like that, whenever an object is created, automatically these constructors are executed. Okay. Default single parameter, three parameter constructors executed. Okay. So that is the thing we have discussed. When the constructor is going to execute means whenever an object of that class is executed, automatically whenever object of that class is created, automatically the constructor is going to execute. Okay. So that is called a constructor, and its no return type, and its name is same as the class name, and its sole purpose is to initialize the instance variables. Okay. And coming to the types, so we have discussed about three types of constructors. One is the default, and the second one is parameterized, and the third one is the copy. So these are the three different types of constructors. One is the default constructor, and parameterized constructor, and the copy constructor. So what is a default constructor? Default means which will not take any parameters. Okay, the constructor will not take any parameter. For example, if you see another example, so not bad. So this is the, let us take one class, suppose car. There is a class known as the car. So one variable is there, that is a brand. So this is the car, suppose. So this is the default one. Okay. So for this, what you can do is brand is equal to, you can write some Hyundai, suppose. Okay. And is Hyundai. So class test public and static void main, and here write string args, suppose. Okay. So what you have to do is create object for this class car. C is equal to new car. System dot out dot print ln. Now C dot brand. So this is the default constructor. This one C dot brand. Now invoke this C dot brand automatically. The constructor is going to initialize the instance variable brand is equal to Hyundai. So for example, when you compile this test dot Java, and test. Now it is going to get Honda. So this is the default one constructor. Okay, so that is one default constructor, and second one is the parameterized. So in the parameterized case, what you have to do is now string B. Now instead of writing this brand directly here, you can write B here. Okay. Now from this constructor, what you have to do is you need to pass one argument like this. One string argument as die. Now it will be copied into B. Now B is assigned to brand. Now when you call this C dot brand, it gives Hyundai. Gives Hyundai again. So see this Java C and Java, you will get Hyundai. Okay. So this is known as the constructor types of constructors. Okay. So what are different types of constructors? Default, parameterized, and the copy constructor. And last one we have discussed is the constructor overloading. Constructor overloading. So what is this overloading? Using the same constructor, using different types of constructors in a class with the same name. Okay, that is the name of the constructor is same here because its name is same as the class name. So that you can use the same constructor name, the name of the constructor, same constructor name with different instances, different cases. Either one may be a default one, another may be parameterized. If it is a parameterized again, it may be a single parameter, two parameters, three parameters, or four parameters, whatever it may be. Okay. So like that, multiple constructors you can use, or sometimes you can also include copy constructor. Okay. So now if a class contains all these types of constructors with the same name, that comes under the constructor overloading. That comes under the constructor overloading. So now this is what we have discussed in the today's class. Okay. Thank you all.